We interviewed Srimati Sonali Mishra, Srimati Sonali Skandan, and Srimati Parul Shah at the Shruti performance.
Srimati Sonali Mishra is a renowned Odissi dancer.
Srimati Sonali Skandan is a devoted and passionate disciple of Bharatanatyam. She is under the guidance of the renowned dancer and teacher Sri C.V. Chandrasekhar.
Srimati Parul Shah is an internationally acclaimed Kathak dancer and choreographer. Parul preserves the form's aesthetic integrity while developing a unique and powerful vocabulary within the Kathak tradition itself.
Srimati Sonali Skandan, Srimati Sonali Mishra, and Srimati Parul Shah, thank you for taking the time out to speak with us. Do you feel like performing Bharatanatyam, Odissi, and Kathak together allows you to properly illustrate the colors of each style?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Let's start. Sure. Well, we did our solos, so I do feel like that gives us the place and scope to show what our form looks like. But I assume you're asking when we're dancing together. It definitely is challenging because what we're trying to do is to have our movements kind of not necessarily be similar, but to find a place where it complements one another. So I think it's tricky. It's tricky, but this was a long process. It didn't happen overnight or even within a week. So there's a lot of going back and forth and being, well, this is true to our movement and we don't do this and we do this and this is okay. So it's a lot of discussion and dialogue. But I do feel like if you do have that whole process and you have that time for that process, then you can still remain true to your form and still collaborate within the different dance forms.
And I think as you guys being musicians, you would probably understand there's such a vast difference between Hindustani, Carnatic, and Odissi music, and to even find a place where the music can merge or sound kind of complementary was a big challenge point for us. We would have preferred live music, obviously, because then we can work with the musicians and create our own music and with their help and assistance, but we had to work within what we already had, which presented a greater challenge to find pieces that, would complement each other in movement, in sound, in makeup, because we went from a slow Odissi to kind of a more vibrant Bharatanatyam to kind of a more, I guess, melodic, and then Kathak, which picked up the pace rapidly, so to find that balance was a little bit difficult.
But that's the thing, as long as you have your own understanding of your form, I think that was a really big thing. We all have a very distinct styles within our style. So I come from the Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra style of Odissi. Sonali comes from Kalakshetra in Bharatanatyam, and Parul comes from the Kumudin Lakhyabin of Kathak. So within each style of classical dance, there is this very strong aesthetics within that classical dance style. I think, so going into the collaboration, we had a very strong idea of our own form, and I think going into it, it really gave us a good idea in terms of what we could and could not do. So there's a lot of thought. For example, the Odissi, starting out with a slower, more lyrical Odissi piece, then picking up the pace a little bit, and then finishing on Kathak. I think what we tried to do was find something that really, really enhanced the beauty of each form. And I think one of the things with performing together is I think that the audience gets a better understanding of the similarities and differences between each, and that's something that we really tried to work towards. And I also think, one of the things we did was work with spacing, because sometimes when you see collaborations, it's very flat, and it's just done with, dancers facing the audience. There's not a lot in terms of, movement on stage or formation. So I think on that end, we try to make it pretty creative and see what we can do with it.
And also, I found very interesting for me was music. Music was very challenging to understand the way that in Odissi and in Bharatanatyam how rhythm is used. It's very different. It's really, really different. So for me, especially with the Bharatanatyam, to hear her rhythms was quite challenging, but I really enjoyed it.
And
'Cause
likewise with the Kathak, to
Yeah.
hear how they listen to music is very different than the way Bharatanatyam dancer would listen to music. So in that sense, it was also very
Yeah, but I enjoyed it because it was just learning. It was learning about different rhythms and how rhythms were used. So
I think it's also interesting to see how percussion is used and the different forms, how the tabla and the type of movement that is with Kathak,
Right.
and the mridangam and how it's used in Bharatanatyam and the pakhaj in Odissi, because the resonance of that pakhaj allows us to do certain things. So it was a lot of information. We learned a lot, I think, by doing the collaboration.
Srimati Sonali Skandan, you have a background in not only Bharatanatyam but also in Carnatic music, mridangam, and yoga. Could you elaborate on how these other fields of study have helped you with your dance career?
My husband is a Carnatic musician. He plays mridangam and violin, and he's a student of Kaikudi Mani, and he composed the jatis for my solo piece. I've learned mridangam from him and kanakon from him, which helps me a lot with my own performance and teaching. I study Carnatic music because I think as a Bharatanatyam dancer, you need to know music. You need to know structures of music. You need to know Carnatic music. Otherwise, there's no way you're just a prisoner to your guru's choreography. You can't create your own. So I think it's essential to study music in addition to dance. There's absolutely, if you're a serious dancer, there's no question about it. You have to study music. Yoga, I started a long time ago, and it just supplements my dance. It gives me the flexibility, the strength, the balance, the centeredness, the focus. And yeah, I think as also, if you're a serious dancer, you need to just supplement your dance as much as possible, physically, mentally. And so that's why I do all three and continue.
Srimati Sonali Mishra, why did you decide to make the change at age 16 to Odissi dance when you were learning Bharatanatyam before then?
My parents were looking for Odissi teachers at the time, but where I was living in Michigan, we didn't have any Odissi teachers. A lot of them were based, they're very far away, or in India, in Odisha actually. So I started out in Bharatanatyam just to give me some kind of structure and form, and I think that was a very good idea, especially at that age, because the discipline of going to class every week, learning a dance form, having a teacher that you have to respect, I think that kind of gave me a good framework, and it definitely helped me when I made that transition to Odissi. It was a little bit difficult at first because you're not used to moving your torso. You have to sit a lot more in Odissi, but I think in the long run it was definitely very helpful. So,
Srimati Parul Shah, can you elaborate on what the Parul Shah Dance Company is?
Sure. The Parul Shah Dance Company it's students that have, well, not students, just three students who have been studying with me for over, 7-8 years. And some have training from back home. Two of them, actually no, one has training from back home from Lahore, and then the other has some modern dance training, and the other one is just she's been learning with me for about, 10 years now. So what we basically do is we do traditional work as well as contemporary work. That's really what we do. It's sometimes
Urban settings.
Urban settings. How do, yes. Okay, well, when we're doing traditional in an urban setting, I feel like it's received well, and when we're doing our contemporary work, there are more questions about
have you studied like a Western dance form? Are you combining Kathak with modern dance? So that's something that I'm always asked. Each Q&A, someone will ask me that when we're doing contemporary work. And I haven't done much contemporary dance. While I was doing my master's in dance, we had to take a few modern dance classes, but not enough to say that I've properly studied a modern dance form. But what I try to do in my contemporary work is, and the process becomes really easy for me because I've studied Kathak all my life almost, and to try to take it to present day life, because all of the Indian classical dance forms are, more than 1,000 years old. So when I'm presenting, say I have a theme in mind and it's generally a present day issue, it's very easy for me to take the movement and to put more movement that's similar to what we see today. So the process really becomes very, very easy for me and I do feel like it's an influence of being also an American, because I am, I'm born and raised here, so have so many influences of being in this country, and not just America, living in a multicultural city like New York City. So you're so influenced by everything you see, just everything. The way one walks is not the same how one walked 1,000 years ago. So all of it, the attitude is so different today. So all of that is going to be influenced in your work. So when I am doing contemporary work, the foundation is Kathak. I don't call it Kathak because it doesn't have the parameters, and I don't remain in those parameters, and I'm not concerned about those parameters. But you will see a very strong influence of the dance form, because that's the only thing I really know. And then I just try to make it, whatever the theme might be, and just take it to today. So the process really is it happens very naturally.
Have you ever performed in a fusion dance such as this? If so, how do your previous experiences compare to this one?
I've done Bharatanatyam with contemporary Western dance, but never different forms of Indian classical dance. So this was my first experience with Kathak and Odissi together, and it was challenging. I learned a lot. It was fun. But I think it was a good experience, and something that I think that a lot of trained and untrained rasikas or artists would appreciate.
I actually did a collaboration very similar to this one in Chicago about a year ago. It was called Tridhara. Very similar concept of three forms coming together. And it was quite different, and I think that's just epidemic of being so long distance. So one of the artists was based in New York, another was in Chicago. A lot of the things we had to do online, so doing our own choreography and watching it, and then having to sort of do your movements based on what you're seeing. So it felt a little bit more just kind of pasted together. This one I felt was much more organic, because we literally took something and really, really thought about every single movement and every single transition. And also helped because we were all based in the same place. And we have, I think I mentioned before, very, very strong aesthetics about our styles and what we want and what we're comfortable with, and how we see dance, and just our own aesthetic tastes, what have you. I think if we were to do this again, I would prefer to do something a little bit more organic, so we could actually work on something more that would blend a little bit well musically. That's a big challenge, because Odissi musicians, at least most of them, are based in Bhubaneswar, so it's very, very difficult to get musicians to come here and create a piece. But I think that was one of the biggest challenges, was just really musically to get everyone on the same page. But it was a good experience.
I've done a bit of collaboration. I've worked with modern dancers, hip-hop dancers, and twice with Bharatanatyam, never Odissi. So I think each time it's a different experience, because you vibe off so much from the dancers, and each dancer has something different to offer. But what I liked about this process is that we had time to really just dialogue with one another, to kind of see what the other person's movement is like, because I wasn't that familiar with. I've seen them perform before, but I don't, and know their vocabulary so much. So yeah, I think the process was it's every time it's different. Every time it's it's a new experience.
Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.